Moving into the off-season and 2025, I'm going to list out 5 players that I think personally will be dealing with a wealth of pressure, whether that may be self-generated or from the public eye. There will be different contexts for different reasons for each of these players. So let's get straight into it, and let's start with number 1 in no particular order. Rank them as you wish. And the first one will be Isaac Quaynor. Last year, inducted into or selected for the All-Australian Final 40 squad. Didn't make the last cut, but was acknowledged for the amazing season he had as a 23-year-old who was unbeatable one-on-one and was a really good intercepting defender who could play small or tall. He ended up averaging 2.5 intercept marks last year. Unfortunately, that fell down to just the 1 this year, which is his career low in his 6 seasons at AFL level. He went from 23 coaches' votes throughout the year of 2023 all the way down to 3 this year. And just 3 games in 2024, Isaac Quaynor had a player rating higher than 10. His last one, most recently being the one against Sydney, where he played as a winger and kicked that goal. Where did it all go wrong for Isaac Quaynor this year? Well, you can always point to the fact that the team started horrifically for many reasons that I've probably explained many times before, and most recently in the review video where I gave Collingwood a pass mark for 2024. So if you want to look at that, go revisit that and then jump back into this. But I made the case mental capacity, fixturing, injuries, everything else in between. And Isaac Quaynor was a big part of why we probably weren't playing to the level that we had expected, because he had dropped in form. More specifically, without beating around the bush, I felt that maybe because of the way the ball was being moved against Collingwood for the most part of this year, and that was moved quite easily against us, like uncontested marks, moving quickly from end to end, it makes it really difficult for the back 6 to set up and create a force field that is what was omnipresent in most of our games last year, as the Collingwood defence thrived with that setup, just really being able to set up shop and not allowing fast ball movement to beat us at the back. And that really took away the intercept marking game of Darcy Moore and Isaac Quaynor. And yes, Darcy Moore, surprise, surprise, will also be in this video and will be next up, so just bear with me. But that we take out some of their linchpins in their game and they're made to look like very average AFL footballers at times. And in particular, Isaac Quaynor much more so than Darcy Moore. While Darcy had a down season, I still think Isaac Quaynor probably had a worse off season, relatively speaking. And the other thing within games I found with Isaac Quaynor is he was too keen to have an impact on certain contests at ground level. He would get sucked into a stoppage and we'd have to pay for the consequences of that decision that he makes to be a bit overzealous at times within the contest. You can look at the game against Sydney where the 2 Sydney players do a swap in that stoppage and Goulden ends up kicking that game-winning goal, where Isaac Quaynor got stuck into that contest and didn't think to stay with Errol Goulden in that stoppage. But there was also many more examples, but that one was probably the apex of it all, and it really just points out to that time and those tendencies that Isaac Quaynor has when he's in and amongst it and there's a lot happening around him. So those are probably some personal improvement points I'd like to see Isaac Quaynor work on going into 2025, as well as his kicking efficiency. It was a bit suspect this year at 72% for the year, which is his second worst for his career and hadn't averaged that low since his 2nd season in the AFL. And we take kicking efficiency statistics with a grain of salt because it's not quite the most accurate reflection upon how people use the footy. But just watching Isaac Quaynor at times, you get a little bit nervous when he's got the ball in hand. But he's not predominantly a ball use player. He's there to be an exponent for his defensive ability. So let's see if he can refine that and overcome this poor year for Quaynor. We also probably need to talk about what position is best for Quaynor. He's been tried on the wing. He played a couple games there for Sydney and Brisbane, and then in the last game against the D's, he gets pushed back into the back line And I think that was to accommodate Ed Allen. And then Jack Crisp was actually subsequently pushed onto the wing. So a lot of compensation was made to ensure that Ed Allen could play on ball in that last game of the year. So that will be an interesting topic throughout the offseason and preseason to see where Quaynor resides. If I had to guess, I'd like to see Quaynor start in the back line again and just see if he can find that form of 2023. And I guess the biggest intangible is the psychological element to all of this. He was a young 24-year-old at the time winning the flag, extremely marketable. He truthfully probably had his head in the clouds for a little bit with all the fandom and just probably needs to reset now and recalibrate and understand what's important and what's not. And I can't speak to any greater depths than that because I don't know the man personally, but history and characteristics have a way of repeating themselves in life. So you look back at certain figures and you listen to their podcast, or if you've played sport yourself, you know in these situations where you're the bee's knees and then you're not, and why that's happened, you can put two and two together. It's not rocket science. I guess what I'm trying to say is specifically when you win a flag, there's ways to go about it, and there's the premiership hangover, there's the complacency, there's the no, we want more, we're gonna go kill and take it all. So there's only a few ways that things can transpire after winning a flag. And I think Isaac Quaynor probably just got a bit complacent and, like I said, got stuck into all the fanfare and maybe lost his head a little bit. But that's okay. He's young. He'll learn. And if it means this 1 year is a write-off and then every year after that is just a building step for him, then it's all worth it in the end. Moving on to the skipper, Darcy Moore. All-Australian last year, premiership captain, 45 coaches' votes, down to just 7 this year. Disposals are down, which naturally, with lesser intercept marks, comes lesser intercept possessions, lesser rebound 50s, and then ultimately lesser disposals as well. The intercept mark specifically went down from 3.6 to 2.4. Anywhere between 3.6 to 5 in a year on average is the best of the best, the creme de la creme. 2.4 makes you a very average intercept marking defender, but the same case to be made for Isaac Quaynor. When the ball is moved that easily against us, further up the ground, it's hard to defend when the ball is always in motion and you're running back towards goal. We saw Darcy Moore try different things, try to be more assertive, try to be ahead of his player, and then that wouldn't work and that would backfire in a big way because the ball would just get out the back, or he'd come across to intercept and have an impact on a contest and would be a non-factor. But the difference is, with Isaac Quaynor and Darcy Moore, I felt like I didn't see Isaac Quaynor in as many of these aerial contests. And the more glaringly obvious reason why Darcy Moore probably didn't take as many intercept marks as we've usually become accustomed to is he would elect to spoil more, or he'd try and mark it and it'd fall. But more the case that he was spoiling more than ever. There are a few games where I'm like, is there a chance you can actually try to take a mark with two of your hands put together and grab that pill from the fucking air? That's how I felt at times, because we were so used to Darcy Moore clunking these footies and just dominating players with great body use, but that wasn't present for the most part of this year. And hey, while he leads the league in spoils and 1%ers, how do you interpret that statistic? Because if he's electing to spoil more rather than taking or trying to take an intercept mark, of course that's going to favour you and make you look prettier with the spoils and 1%ers. But the turnaround for Darcy Moore at the back end of this year was incredible. The last 5 games, along with the squad of course, really lifted. That goes without saying. And barring the game against the D's because he was concussed, so we'll look at the last 5 games outside of the Demons game, he received coaches' votes in 2 of those 5 games. He had a season-high 13 intercept possessions against the Tigers and a season-high 5 intercept marks against Brisbane, and also got coaches' votes for the game against Carlton. So I've found a new level of respect for Darcy. I felt like there were so many times where he could have asked for respite from fly. He could have said, hey mate, move me to the forward line. Hey, give me a week off. But he faced the music every week. And while he wasn't performing every week, he still showed up. And the effort was always there. It's just the execution wasn't. So it just shows like that's the type of guy you want leading the club, who will shy away from nothing, for better or worse. And perseverance pays in big ways in this situation because he's turned around his season. And it's just important that he carries this into 2025. He must continue this. He's mentally capable now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. There's nothing that can break this man because he's played through every game when everyone was yelling at the screen saying the worst things about him. He still showed up and he did a job and he managed to refine form where I thought after that Hawthorn game, I said, mate, Darcy Moore's cooked. Like, he needs a game in the VFL or at least a couple weeks off just to reset. But he didn't do that. He just kept showing up. And he holds a big responsibility to ensure the team is back on track in 2025 and has a right mental approach going into this preseason. Next up, we have Nathan Kruger. And I said there's going to be players under pressure for many different reasons. Does he get a contract going into next year? I'm not too sure. So this is we're in a bit of limbo with this conversation about Kruger, but let's just assume that he is here in 2025. He's played 6 games, he's kicked 7 goals and in 2024, and he's played 13 games in 3 years at the Pies, and just a couple at Geelong the year before that, coming over to Collingwood. So he does, look, granted, he needs a bit of luck with injury and needs to find himself on the field more. Is it luck? Is it preparation? It's not for me to make that judgment. I don't know enough to make that assumption. But in 2025, Kruger has a massive opportunity to be a swingman at the Collingwood Football Club. He can play forward, he can play pinch hit and ruck, and I believe he can play in the back line and help out Darcy Moore. I'm thinking Darcy Moore, Mark Keane, Nathan Kruger could be our 3-pronged backline in a few years' time when Jeremy Howe retires, Braden Maynard maybe moves elsewhere, positional-wise. I think that is a realistic back 3 as far as your key size defenders are concerned. Those are our 3 tools that could take us a long way if we get Mark Keane, if Kruger finds his way. But if he plays VFL next season, he has to dominate. And he can't just rest on the fact that, oh yeah, when I play AFL, I'm a better player anyway, so I don't have to kick 3, 4, 5 goals in the VFL to warrant my spot at AFL level. Well, you probably are going to have to now. We saw in the last few weeks of the season, you weren't selected. We had 1 tall forward for the game against Melbourne. We didn't have Brody Myercheck. We didn't have Dan McStay. So you think, sweet, you'd be licking your lips if you're Kruger at that point. But we went small ball. So you're not going to just get your spot because players aren't available. You've got to warrant it by showing some form. And I believe that he is an AFL level player. It's just a matter of getting into the squad first. I think that's going to be his biggest trouble. Getting into the squad when there's Mason Cox, when there's Brody Myercheck, when there's Darcy Cameron, when there's Dan McStay, when you've got Jamie Elliott who marks like a tall. That's the issue he's going to run into. But that's where I hope, again, also, he has an opportunity in the back line. So we'll see how that goes for Kruger, but I'm quite optimistic about him. I'm not sure about you guys. Lachie Schultz, his player rating from 2023 to 2024 went down 40%. He kicked 33 goals last year, down to 24, which is expected with the star-studded forward line you would expect with the small forwards we have, Bobby Hill, Jamie Elliott to name. But he had the same amount of shots that he had at Fremantle at Collingwood this year. He was just far more inaccurate. 44% accuracy in front of goals. And his goal assists output was down by 5 decimal points. It was 0.7. It was down to 0.2 this year. So he had the ball less in hand and wasn't providing enough goal scoring opportunities for his other teammates. And that was evident with his field kicking in particular, guys. In crucial moments this year, I just felt like his disposal efficiency by foot was poor. And we gave up a lot for this guy, right? We let Jack Ginnivan walk for basically nothing, and we gave up our first-round pick for this year. So he's got a lot to prove going into next year. I'm questioning his mental capacity, his mental fortitude. He's spoken about the adversities mentally at times this year. He's had sit-downs with Fly and really emphasize that as a highlighted point in conversations about mental health and adjusting to this new environment. I mean, you're at the Collingwood Football Club, the most demanding football club in the land, and you're in a footy bubble environment that exists in Victoria. So that's going to be my big question mark for Mini Mihocek, Lachie Schultz next year. Can he develop this mental fortitude, and just what do we need him to lift by? He's down 40% in player ratings. So where do we find him next year to be at an acceptable level? I'm not too sure, but it needs to be better than this year. And then lastly, pressure in another different element for someone like Ed Allen. He structurally offers a lot for Collingwood in the midfield. He offers speed, youth, and contest in the midst of that engine room. So we need someone like Ed Allen to hit. We've tried Finlay, we've tried Lachie Sullivan, we've tried Bytel, we've tried Ned Long. Some of them you could probably make the case that they've still got opportunities, but I think none more than Ed Allen have the biggest opportunity out of that pool of players to solidify a spot in the final 22/23. He's 20 years old now, going 21 in 2025, and will probably get the same attention from Collingwood fans and the media that Finlay Macrae got at the start of this year. And ironically, they were both pick 19, and at similar times we started to ask more questions about Finn. We're going to do the same for Ed Allen now. He had a great back end of his season in the VFL, and that's why he earned his spot against the D's. That's why he earned his spot in the midfield against the D's. His form was so good that we moved magnets to ensure that Ed Allen gets to play his best position against the D's. So those are my 5 players who I think are under the most pressure going into 2025 and will be critical as to how far Collingwood can go in 2025. Go Pies.